answered. It's the court-supervised transfer of property from the deceased to the next person to own the property, who is rightfully entitled to own the property. That's what's important. Now, to tell you about probate, I need to begin in the year 1066. When William the Conqueror had conquered England, he stood on the island and he said, "I own this island." And he was using the feudal system. His money at that time was land. And what he did is he gave out land to people who had helped him in the invasion of England. The way he would do that is he would pick up a clod and he would deliver a clod, say, to a duke. He would say, "Okay, here is a clod from the Cornish coast, and you are now the Duke of Cornwall." And he'd pick up another clod. I'm not really adhering to history here, I'm just explaining it. He'd pick up a clod and hand it to another one and say, "You are the Duke of York." And this delivering of a clod was the ceremony that shifted title to the dukes. The dukes, in turn, shifted title by delivery of the clod, which was livery of season, to lesser nobility, and then again from the lesser nobility to the actual freemen who so-called owned their land. Now, each of these feudal steps in ownership owed fealty back to William. They agreed, in return for the clod that gave them possession of the land, they agreed to furnish food to William, or money to William, or soldiers or knights, and that was how the system of supporting the crown was set up. So along came the Crusades, and the difficulty was, how could a noble person go on a crusade and see that they could deliver a clod to the next in succession in their line of ownership? Because at that time there was no other way to transfer other than by livery of season over to the next generation. And the English had developed the idea that the oldest son should get the whole estate. The problem was, what if you died while you were on the crusade, and how could you deal with that? You wouldn't be on hand to deliver the clod to your oldest son. If you deliver the clod to your oldest son now, he'll say, "Goodbye, Dad. I'm not going to take care of you. Go have your fun in the crusade. But when you come back, I'll be in control and I'll stay in control." So very often the noble person would go to a trusted friend. That's where we get the word trustee. You go to the trusted friend and say, "Here is the clod for my estate. While I'm gone on the crusade, will you take care of my spouse and my children? And if I don't come back, then deliver the clod to my oldest son." And he would say, "Okay." So the noble person would go off on the crusade, and the trusted friend would sometimes do faithfully what was promised, and sometimes would take over and claim that the land was his own. Of course, that was wrong. Well, the king by then had courts, and the courts, one of the courts was called Chancery, which was the chief ecclesiastical court, and the Chancery court decided it would enforce promises like that so that people would be willing to go on the crusade. And that's how the trust law and estate law was born. So probate is simply a way of delivering the clod to the next generation. Now, the advantage of probate is if you let the court supervise it, generally courts are very good at getting the property where it should be. They also manage things like seeing that the debts are paid or settled. So that is probate.